glad to be able to go right back to our Toyota of Easley guest line and bring on a good friend of the new owners of Club 9 Sports, Michael Wranovics, who is now the founder of the Basketball Alumni Legends League. Willie B., I don't know if you know what the acronym for Basketball Alumni Legends League is. Hustle.
Ball.
It's Ball. That's
nice.
right. He started the Ball. You can go to the-ball.com. This is one of the more intriguing basketball leagues I've seen in a long time. Michael, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, Will.
I appreciate you getting on with us. Michael, now listen, you got your MBA from Stanford. You're obviously the most intelligent person that we've had on the program in quite some time.
not saying much.
That says very little.
It's definitely not the typical career path for coming out of that school, but this is what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, you got your MBA from Stanford, then you had a great career going in San Francisco, but this was a passion of yours. Tell us, just walk us through the process of how you came up with this idea and then why you decided to go ahead and run with it and implement it right now in where we are in college basketball.
All right, sure will. It actually stems from my days at Stanford because that's when I got hooked on Stanford basketball. And after a couple of years, we had a point guard named Arthur Lee that shocked everybody and led the Stanford program to the Final Four. And that player in particular kind of sparked my idea with this. Art Lee, he was a fan favorite, very exciting player to watch, natural leader. And when it came time for the draft, and this is after his senior night when he dominated Jason Terry and helped clinch the first Pac-10 championship ever for Stanford. He ended up going undrafted. Of course, Terry has gone on to have a really good career in the NBA. And so it just made me kind of think about it. What happens to a guy like Arthur Lee, and how many Arthur Lees are there? And, at Stanford alone, we had many great players who have been all-conference level, in some cases all-Americans, that did not make it to the NBA, at least not right away. And so I started to look at that more closely and try to figure out if this was true in other programs around the country, and was able to find out, yes, it is. And so I just started to think about, could there be a league? It was just an idea on a napkin at first, and I had to go out and test the napkin. And naturally, I thought this would be attractive to college hoops fans, especially the local fans who appreciate these players who come out of these programs. But the question was, could we get interest from television networks? Would the agents for these players want them playing in this league? Would the players be available? So a lot of questions like that had to be answered, and I've been working on it the last 3 years plus, just trying to figure out what the business model would need to be and where the teams would be located. And we've tested the concept on every key audience, and now we're at the point where we really feel like we've got something, and we plan to launch the league next year.
So tell us, Michael, what's unique about the Ball versus other leagues? I mean, I'm assuming something like the NBDL would be a competitor of yours?
Well, yeah, no, I'll tell you all about what makes it different, but actually the D-League is not a competitor at all. They run during the traditional basketball months, and it's very important that they do so because the NBA teams need the players from the D-League teams to be able to come up for a 10-day contract. If they have a need on a roster.
A la Jeremy Lin last year.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me, a la Jeremy Lin last year.
Yeah, exactly. So the D-League teams run concurrently with the NBA schedule. It actually ends at the end of April. And then, of course, so that means it's also running right along with college season. So the D-League teams are actually not located in college basketball hotbeds. That's very important because they don't want to compete with the popular college team. So D-League teams are in places like Bakersfield, California, or Sioux Falls. So those are two key differences. One, we're not competing with the D-League. We're off-season. We run during the summertime from early June to mid-August. It's a time when guys who play the D-League can also play in our league. So it's something that actually helps the D-League because who they are competing with are the European leagues for talent. And the European leagues tend to pay more, so they lose a lot of players to Europe. If a guy is playing in the D-League and in the ball, then in a lot of cases they'll be making enough additional income to actually stay in the U.S. So in that sense, we're increasing the talent pool for the D-League.
Huh.
So that one key difference is the fact that we run during the summertime. That's when so many of these players are actually available. It's when the television networks need content, and it's when the fans don't have as many entertainment, or especially in the sports world, options. But another key difference is these teams are localized. So we will have teams in college basketball hotbeds. They're not competing with the college teams because of the time of year we're doing it. And all of the players on that roster will be from the local schools. So, say you have a team in South Carolina, you could have guys from Clemson, like Casey Rivers, Andre Young, Cliff Hammonds. You have a Devin Downey from South Carolina. I actually met this nice young man, Andre Jones from Winthrop, when I was at the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament recently. These are great players who have a following. They had 4 years to build a following during their college days, and so here's something for them to do post-college.
Yeah, Michael, I was just thinking about that when you started to talk about how the team chemistry would be made up and the different players. And by the way, we're joined right now in our Toyota of Easley guest line with Michael Wranovics right now of The Ball. Go to the-ball.com. You can read all about that as they have created what is a really, really interesting concept with the Basketball Alumni Legends League. But, Michael, that's what I wanted to tell you about. Around here, in ACC basketball country, local teams here to see some of the guys that might not be good enough to play on an NBA roster. I mean, Clemson just had one in Brian Narcissus, who is now signed with the Harlem Globetrotters. So, still good enough to go play and be out there and participating and make money playing the sport, but maybe not at the level of even being that 8th or 9th man on an NBA roster. But the fans are still so entertained by these players, their energy, their ability to go out there and energize a crowd and play and dunk and have the alley-oops and have all these other things that we love to watch them do. And I would think this is just maybe the most beautiful outlet to see these teams be able to be made up of a lot of local talent that people really for 4 years they become their favorite players on a roster in college and might not have a chance to watch them play anymore.
That's exactly the whole point of this thing. I mean, these are outstanding players. Whether they're in the NBA or not, there is no question how good these players are, and we know that from watching them in college. But also, when they're 21, they have not peaked. That's usually the last time we get to see them. But they continue to develop their skills. They are professional basketball players. We're not talking about guys who have day jobs at this point. These are guys who have continued to play as pros, whether it's overseas or in the D-League. But we're also talking about guys who could make it to the NBA. I mean, you mentioned Jeremy Lin earlier. He could have easily not ended up being given a real shot at the NBA. But fortunately, he was given that shot. Now he's a star. But a lot of the guys we're talking about, sometimes it's just a matter of the timing when the draft was going on, who was picking and who was available. Some guys develop at different rates. So while most of our guys might not make it to the NBA, there will definitely be some players who get that shot. And I've talked to a lot of NBA scouts who say they'll definitely be coming to our games. And this will be a nice off-season place for them to scout talent.
Yeah.
But to your point, it really is about a great product on the floor. These guys can really play the game. It's a chance to see some of these guys who never got to play with each other before. They only played against each other. So now you have these kind of collections of all-stars playing together for the first time. But it's also just the other thing you mentioned was that these are guys that they already know and love and are familiar with. So for the fan, it's there is that star power, and sports have always been driven by star power. This just happens to be a situation with basketball where you have so few spots in the NBA draft. We just had an NBA draft that was unbelievable, some of the guys who didn't get picked. And so you have over 1,000 seniors coming out of college programs every year in Division I alone. And so there really are a lot of well-known players available out there. And it's only during the summertime that you could do something like this.